All right, we're looking at the notes in chapter 12 of John. I was talking last time about speech and how our speech is downgraded. And it's just, I don't know. I've heard of some phrases that I just find unbelievable. Like I can't believe how bad. Um, like for instance, I was saying last time the phrase "go to hell." That was pretty typical, like in the 80s, 90s action movies. You'd probably see it in every movie, you know. And that's horrible to say that to somebody. That's terrible, you know. But by today's standards, that would be tame. Uh, well, I don't know. That's still really bad. But today you just have the worst profanity you've ever heard, and I just can't believe, like, have you ever heard this? That in the 80s, you would have movies like RoboCop, Rambo, Commando, Predator, Terminator, James Bond movies. You know, there are channels that they study how many people get wiped out in a movie. They call that body count back then. Now, do you know what body count means for young people? It has a different meaning now. It's a horrible meaning. It has to do with a certain statistic, but it's just another reflection of how bad things are getting. Um, but that's terrible too. Body count of, you know, James Bond. How many people does Sean Connery wipe out? You know, that body count. That would be horrible. That's horrible enough, but it has another meaning that's even worse now today. It's so sad. But I was talking about how in an old episode of Star Trek they illustrated a better speech. I was shocked by that. But anyway, that's what I mentioned last time. I'll stop talking about Star Trek. In chapter 12, we're going through quite a bit here. I just read this chapter last time. They anoint him for his burial. Mary anoints him with the spikenard, and Judas gets all offended, you know, and says, "Why did you waste our money?" And, you know, he doesn't actually care about Jesus. He just cares about keeping all the money for himself, you know. That's all he's interested in is money and power. He wants Jesus to be the conquering hero of the Malachi ending prophecy. He doesn't want Jesus to be this suffering servant that we see in other prophecy. He's going to come twice. He's the first time as the suffering servant, second time as the Malachi prophecy, the conquering king. So Judas is a little confused. He thinks he's the conquering king, so I might as well live it up and spend lots of dough. And doesn't work out for him. But he complains still here in that was verse 4 where Judas complains. And then we have the triumphal entry. There's quite a bit here. Probably going to look especially at this from 23 on, but let's look at this first note here. It's on verse 8. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. Isn't that true? Even if you handed over your whole paycheck to the poor people you deal with and encounter every day, you know, it still wouldn't be enough because Satan, you know, that it doesn't make sense to me, you know, in a civilized country, civilized world with all the extravagances we all enjoy. We're spoiled brats. And yet the poor are still poor people. It's sad. Why don't we have replicators yet? Maybe they do have them. They just don't want to give them. They don't want to share them with the poor. That's also another point of why we're not where we should be. You know, why don't we have heaven on earth yet? There's still something sucking us dry and making this world still ruled by evil, for there still to be poor in existence, you know. You'd think if Star Trek were a reality, that is something they say in that. You know, if you have a replicator, obviously there is no, you don't have a need for food. You could probably replicate a bunch of dough, right? And, well, there's no need for money if you can just replicate whatever you need. I guess, yeah, never mind. I was about to say something silly, but I was thinking Jesus must have had a replicator to replicate all that fish, but well, he was the replicator. He is the infinite. He can do anything. He's king. But okay. Okay, here's the note on verse 8. If Jesus Christ were not God in the flesh, 1 Timothy 3:16, then he was the greatest demon-possessed egotist who ever got stuck on himself. Jesus told those people that if they had money, that they should spend it on him instead of poor folks. Wow, yeah. Huh, how about that? Okay, there's a note on verse 39. Therefore they could not believe, because that Isaiah said again, He hath blinded their eyes and hardened their heart, that they should not see with their eyes, nor understand with their heart, and be converted, and I should heal them. Okay. Note on Matthew 13:14. The Calvinists use this verse to prove that the non-elect cannot believe because God made no atonement for them, limited atonement. Paul makes it clear that God blinded Israel, verse 40, after they had rejected the light God had given them through Jesus Christ, Acts 28:26-27. They rejected the miracles they had seen, verse 37, specifically the raising of Lazarus, John 11:45-48. Notice that right after telling you that they could not believe, John tells you many believed in verse 42. See the same thing in John 3:32-33. Let's read verse 42. Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also many believed on him, but because of the Pharisees they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue. So there were people quietly believing. I mean, come on. They can't all be like, there's no way that could have happened. That's just some illusion. They're not all dumb. But what he's saying in the note there is that limited atonement concept doesn't jive. It's not, doesn't make sense. How could God ever be limited? He's infinite. He's the king. He can do anything. There is no limited atonement. There's the atonement, and whether you accept it or not, it's yeah. I think that's all you really need to say. It doesn't make sense. So some did believe. All right, verse 48. He that rejecteth me and receiveth not my words hath one that judgeth him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. No matter how many fundamentals, principles, or teachings of the Word of God, a neo-Orthodox expression used by Tillich, Niebuhr, Barth, and Brunner, a man accepts if he does not believe the words of God. He will be judged by the words, plural, he rejected. Oh, whoa. Hang on. Whew. Sorry. Man, that was scary. Somehow a wasp got in here. I think I got him, but man, I could have been dead. All right, where were we on that? Man. Okay, we're right in the middle of this note for verse 48. He that rejecteth me and receiveth not my words hath one that judgeth him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. I wonder where that came from. That's scary, though. No matter how many fundamentals, principles, or teachings of the Word of God, a neo-Orthodox expression used by Tillich, Niebuhr, Barth, and Brunner, a man accepts if he does not believe the words of God, he will be judged by the words, plural, he rejected. Those words that were said to be spirit and life, John 6:63, and truth, John 8:45-47, you either have them or you do not. Psalm 119, 130, Isaiah 41, 26, 51, 16, 59, 21, Jeremiah 1, 9, 6, 19, 13, 10, Hosea 6, 5, Amos 8, 11, John 5, 47, 8, 47, 14, 23, 15, 7, Revelation 22, 19. We profess to have them in English, Psalm 12, 6-7, in a book translated under the authority of a king, Ecclesiastes 8:4. So I think he's making a point about the different translations, that the bad translations versus the authorized King James. And he's making a distinction there again. A lot of people don't like that, but that was spooky. All right. That's just how I've felt. I don't know how to explain the King James versus the NIV, the other translations. I made the attempt a long time ago you could probably go back and look at some of those videos I did in NIV versus King James, looking at different verses and comparing them. And it is interesting, but I'm also a jerk back then, and I still am in a lot of ways, um, but I think in those videos you can kind of see when you start to look at each of those verses and the difference in the translation, it's kind of devastating. So we have to be careful on that. What translation are you looking at? And for me, though, I ended up buying a King James and looking at it for myself, and I concluded that without anybody telling me, I've probably had people tell me King James is better. I probably had some beautiful young lady that I went to Bible studies with, somebody like that, like the pastor's daughter. I had two pastors' daughters that I could have been with anybody I wanted. That would have been perfect. But I was too dumb back then. But they probably told me to go with the King James, and I was a NIV weirdo back then, and I was nothing back then. I didn't even read it hardly, and hadn't read through any of it for myself. Look at what you had right in front of you, and you missed it. God! Ridiculous! All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and read 13. Not now. We're going to take a break. But I'm going to read 13 here and look at some more notes. So, be right back.